Welcome to EcoMotion's Spotlight on Rwanda. I'm Lizine Bal. I'm the director of the Paris Program for Global Innovation, and I'll be hosting this panel today. So we're lucky to have with us three really interesting people for this panel. One, a senior government official from Rwanda, one, the CEO and founder of one of Rwanda's most successful startups, and one, a venture capitalist who has been working for the past year or two in order to try to broker deals in Rwanda. And so what we're going to be speaking about today is whether or not Rwanda, or how Rwanda could be a hub for smart mobility startups and for smart mobility innovation. And so we're going to start now with our first speaker, Innocent Muhizi, who is the CEO of RISA, the Rwanda Information Society Authority, which is the government institution that's responsible for planning and coordinating Rwanda's national ICT for development strategy. So Innocent, I would like to start. Thank you for joining us. Rwanda was one of the last places that I visited before COVID, and it blew me away. I think that when you don't know Rwanda so well, and you don't know, like, you have these vague understandings of having read different things about Rwanda in the past, and none of that prepares you for the sight of this modern and dynamic city of Kigali. And so what I was hoping we could start with is if you could speak a little bit about Rwanda today, about the exciting things that are happening there within the field of innovation, and about what Rwanda's vision is for how it wants to position itself in the global innovation ecosystem. Innocent.
Thank you, Dr. Aliza, and greetings to you all from different parts of the world. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to be part of this conversation. I'll jump right into it. Dr. Aliza's question is that Rwanda's vision, what Rwanda is doing in the innovation space. Rwanda's journey is a little bit short in terms of innovation, but it spans about 20 to 25 years so far. And basically it is stemmed off where we had a 20-year ICT plan that was going alongside the Vision 2020 that we had, which now, by the way, we're transitioning into Vision 2050 to be able to see how to make Rwanda an innovation a hub for not only the continent, but also the whole world. And to that effect, we have started to see some of that coming to fruition. Rwanda's vision is to make Rwanda a proof of concept destination for any startup company, any investor, anyone who wants to start something in the innovation ecosystem. And we've started to see this happen where the proof of concept strategy focuses on a number of areas, but for example, in the medical space, in the fintech space, in the agriculture space, but in terms of also smart cities, which is really one of the flagship projects that Rwanda is championing on the continent. And in that respect, we've started and been doing a number of different activities where, for example, I'm glad to be together with my colleagues who has been doing quite a lot of interesting activities in the smart mobility, where he has started a company that focuses on the motorcycles that are running on smart meters and batteries, basically, which is one of the companies that is doing this in Rwanda. We have companies like VW that have been started smart companies that are running on cars that actually run on battery and electric vehicles, as they're termed in the global domain. And this is actually riding on other smart mobility initiatives. For example, I'm sure you've heard of companies like Tap and Go that has automated the entire payment process in terms of transportation in the public transport space. And we're looking at other innovative ideas. Well, looking at a rapid transport system that actually sort of enables the public transportation within the city of Kigali and actually beyond to really be running on smart technologies. So I'll pause here for a minute and maybe we'll come back into the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that what's very interesting about Rwanda's value proposition is the fact that your government is so fully behind this, in the sense that, and particularly I think that's important with smart mobility. I know I've spoken to Zipline about this before, and about how important the government help to them was in terms of getting through the regulatory aspects of piloting a mobility startup. And so I was hoping you could speak a little bit to that in terms of when a startup comes to Rwanda and is hoping to use Rwanda as a testing ground for its work, what sort of things can it expect from the government?
So yeah, thank you. So Rwanda being a very small country, and one of the key things that we really pride ourselves in is the population, the citizens, and the ability to be able to move things around fast and quickly. So the government offers quite good package of incentives for global startup companies that would want to come and establish their base here in Rwanda and test their products and services and then take them global. So for example, there is an electrical mobility strategy that was approved recently that has quite a number of different incentives, be it in terms of taxes, be it in terms of other services that are offered. And the sheer support of the government that is put behind any company or any investor for that matter that comes to Rwanda to establish their business. So for example, some of the services that are given are a one-stop office where you're able to get all the decision makers to be able to process and get, whether it be a license, whether it be any other policy. And by the way, even if it's a particular piece of legislation that you really would like to see change or improved, that one-stop office is able to put it together without having to take investors through the hoops of different offices and different government entities. So that one centralized office that is able to offer that package of different incentives, policies that are supporting the government. Yeah. And some of other things that really that the government offers is to partner with you, not necessarily in terms of putting in equity in the company or in the investment, but rather in terms of awareness, marketing, promotion, that the government is able to partner with the investor to showcase the products and services that you're offering. For example, in some of the global events that the Rwanda government participates in, we invite some of the ecosystem players. And I've happened to be on the same trip with Josh, where we're discussing about these services in different fora around the world. So the number of different services the government offers include also that awareness campaign over and above different incentives in terms of taxes, in terms of the policy regulation that is conducive.
I know that I've spoken to startups who are working in Rwanda and have just been astounded by the sheer speed in which they say, we need to get this thing done, and it gets done. Once there's a firm commitment of the government behind what the startup is doing. So I think that's a very valuable thing for a startup that needs the regulatory framework and needs the governmental support.
Absolutely. And that is one of the things that really, some instance, we are also a government like many others. There are some things that do not come as fast as we would want to get them moving. if it's a piece of legislation, for sure, it is going to take a little bit of number of weeks to go from initial drafting to cabinet, and then it goes to parliament for enactment. That takes a little bit of time. But our wish is really to get to have investors and say, if they are putting in their money and knowing that time is money, really we wouldn't want to take their time. We would want to really give them a service that is commensurate with the money that they're putting into the investment they're making.
Wonderful. That was really, really interesting. Now, our next speaker is Josh Whale, who is the CEO of Ampersand Rwanda. Ampersand Rwanda is a smart mobility startup that's at the forefront of the electronic transport revolution in Africa and has recently raised, if I understand correctly, the biggest Series A for an e-mobility company in sub-Saharan Africa. Is that correct, Josh? So that's very exciting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Ampersand does?
Great to be here today. My name's Josh Whale, CEO of Ampersand, based here in Kigali. We are an e-mobility company in the business of climate change. At least that's what we like to call ourselves. So I'm going to share a screen just to show you what it is that we do. So we're an e-mobility company working with battery swap system with the motorcycles. In Rwanda, like in much of Africa, there are large numbers of taxi and commercial motorcycles. Here in Rwanda, they actually make up over half of the entire vehicle fleet that's on the road at any given time. And we really set out to target this market because we were going for an opportunity to electrify a whole mass market fleet and do it at a price point that's actually cost competitive with fuel without sacrificing convenience or on performance. So the way it works, as we see here, is so drivers rent a battery pack, which we build actually here in Rwanda ourselves. They rent the battery packs from this network of these swap stations. We've got 5 locations now around Kigali. The swaps take about 2 minutes, which is about the same amount of time as it takes to refuel. Drivers have access to financing, and they pay for the energy as they use it. They don't have to have a subscription model or anything like that. So we're able to offer a motorcycle that costs less, a battery pack energy solution that costs less than fuel, all of which delivers more power, is more convenient. And so we hope this represents, if you'll forgive the cliche, a tipping point. You know, we don't have to go for the peak of the Hershey's Kiss business model. We don't have to go for the luxury vehicle and then work our way down to get to something that's really mass market. We can go straight for the mass market here in Rwanda and East Africa.
Wonderful. Very interesting. So I know that we've spoken before, and you mentioned to me that you shopped around a little bit before deciding that Rwanda was the place that you wanted to pilot Ampersand. Why Rwanda? Why was that your choice?
Yeah, we looked at Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda. The economics in the market here were really favorable, slightly better than those other larger markets, but as a place where you could come and set up a company easily. It really stood out. Low corruption. I think so. I'm personally from New Zealand, and we sort of share this small country advantage of being able to move quickly. I think same story as Israel as well, being able to not have as ungainly bureaucracies and ungainly interest groups. You know, very, very quick and easy to get to speak to the decision makers in government, and a very decisive and nimble and fast moving government as well. Also, just as a manageable kind of size and market, very accessible and very open with good international flight connections as well. So we really believe in Rwanda as a proof of concept country for the African continent and for solutions. And that's particularly so in clean mobility. Rwanda's now recently passed an e-mobility strategy with low electricity tariffs, low import duties, low VAT, preferential treatment on license plates. And as far as I know, is the first country in Africa to have such an advanced e-mobility policy.
So I'm curious to hear your opinion and tell me the truth now on like Rwanda's been saying that they see themselves as a very good place as a really easy landing pad for launching innovative technology businesses within Africa. But they've also been saying that they think that they're a very good place for global startups that are not specifically looking to Africa to do that. And of course, Zipline is the most famous example of a global startup that wasn't really targeting the African market, but chose Rwanda as the place to do a pilot. And I'm curious what your thought is about that. Like if you were giving advice to startups that were not looking at Africa as their primary market, would you say that this is a good place to look to pilot or a bad place, and why? Like, what sort of advice would you give a startup saying, well, maybe I was thinking about going to Poland, but maybe I should be going to Rwanda or to wherever?
Well, firstly, it's lovely here. It's never winter, so that's if you're
Europe.
But no, seriously, I think for us, for our business model and for Ziplines, a really common feature is that the potential value proposition that we have in this market is very strong compared to some other markets, combined with the rapid movement on the regulatory side. So mobility is often a regulated sector, so is aviation, and in both our cases, we've seen that rapidity of movement, something we could never hope for in a big market like the United States. And so for in our case, we have this huge fleet of these petrol motorcycle taxis that make up over half of all transport. Drivers are spending more every day on fuel than they take home to their families. We've actually got abundant and overabundance even of electricity here in the country. And so there are some market factors that make this, really the sweet spot. And again, maybe I'm using too many cliches today, but the lowest hanging fruit for certain types of business model. In our case, for mass market electric mobility. In Zipline's case, it's for aviation. I mean, Rwanda, from here to go west to Lake Kivu, it's about 80 kilometers as the drone flies, but it's a 3.5-hour drive, even though the roads are really good. And because Rwanda is so hilly. So for something like, for instance, if you're looking at electric aviation, for passenger aircraft, Rwanda would be a fantastic place to start. I'd love to see some electric airplanes and hydrogen fuel cell aircraft. It's an aviation hub. Also, I'm seeing some things in electric vehicles for agriculture. There's a startup here also called Ox Delivers that has an electric truck that's running a kind of a cargo bus, essentially a bus for cargo service in the southwest of Rwanda in a really hilly area, but with abundant electricity supply. So I think there are a bunch of different areas where new forms of mobility would find a really easy regulatory environment and super hot, super strong value propositions for them to get started, and then use Rwanda as a launch pad for the rest of Africa and the rest of the world.
Super. Okay, thank you so much. My last speaker is Caleb Zipperstein, who is the venture capital lead, or is just finishing his job actually as the venture capital lead at Empower Africa's business network. Now, Caleb has spent the last 2 years or so exploring how to drive more venture capital investment into Rwanda. And I know that we've spoken several times about this, and that you feel very enthusiastic about the idea of partnerships with Rwanda in the smart mobility sector, but in general with the global innovation ecosystem. So I wanted to hear from you. Why are you so enthusiastic?
And there's so many places to begin. First of all, I want to thank you, my friend Auntie, Dr. Eliza. Josh, it's an honor to meet you, and Mr. Buhizi, it's an honor to see you. Your colleague Tony Sabera is a very dear friend of mine, Antoine Tony Sabera, who I've spent many days with in Kigali. So it's really grateful to see you, and Josh, of course. Big mazel tov! Congratulations on just this incredible achievement.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Literally, if you would have waited until I was still in Kigali, as I was talking about this. It's coming. A big round is coming. It would have been great, but you were operating in the shadows and waited for me to get back to Israel to announce your exceptional raise and round. And I just really am excited to watch all of your progress. Why am I so enthusiastic about Rwanda? Obviously, everything that the distinguished panelists here have said on the business side is completely true, and is a primary reason why I'm optimistic. But I want to get into some of the other sort of reasons why I'm so optimistic about Rwanda's role in being a real sort of place of innovation. And the first of that is just how inspiring of a place it actually is. I think for people to really be able to innovate, they need to be surrounded by an ecosystem of like-minded people that are really, really dedicated to making change. And that change can be in their personal lives, that change can be in the lives of their community, and it can be in the lives, it can be for their country, it can be for their world, but you really get the sense in Rwanda that whether it's a government official up to the president, to a startup such as Ampersand, to an NGO, there's a real sense of, or even, it could be a coffee farmer. There's a real sense of intentional living in this incredible country, and specifically where I've spent time in the incredible city of Kigali. And I think that kind of atmosphere, that collective conversation about how we can improve the world creates an incredible sort of inspiring and energizing atmosphere for innovation to succeed. In my career, I've spent time in Dubai, I've spent time in London, I've worked with venture capitalists and investors in Singapore. I'm originally from Silicon Valley in San Francisco. I don't think I've been in a city where there's been as much sort of hustle as I felt when I spent time in Kigali. And that incredible work ethic and the incredible energy, I think, is really, really infectious. And it may sound just absolutely like I'm speaking totally holistically here, not speaking in any business sense, but innovation does really require that type of energy in order to succeed. So that's one reason why I'm just so optimistic about it, because of the vibe. But two is just the people there themselves also bring so much intelligence to the table. And the most important thing about building a business anywhere is the team, and specifically building a business in Rwanda, is who you're going to partner with on the ground. And I believe that the caliber of local partners and the talent pool that's being developed in Rwanda from the folks that I've met, whether they're presidential scholars who have studied at top universities around the world, whether they're Bridge to Rwanda fellows who are getting full scholarships on their own merit to Ivy Leagues. You have an exceptional pool of talent that can not just support you with your market entry into Africa, but they can really support you with your global business strategy as well. I've personally experienced this on a multitude of occasions. And so second would be the talent that's there. Mm. Third, of course, is just this idea that with the support of government and with the support of ecosystem, founders will be able to develop their technology at much, much faster rates in real time than they would be able to in some of the other markets where POCs are a little bit more challenging. And with all of the hype today that surrounds raising venture capital, hiring a great team, getting public relations and everything on the business side. Ultimately, technology companies are measured on how fast and effective they can actually develop their product. And I think in a market like Rwanda, where you're really able to just leapfrog your competition in terms of your usage ability to develop and use your technology in real time with partners, team, and most importantly, where it's safe and well received. I think that innovators who choose to go there will really benefit from the ability to leapfrog their competition in technology.
So
also, I want to just finish with two quick ones here, Dr. Lisa. The ability for like just the sheer business case of companies who have succeeded with a POC in Rwanda speaks for itself. And lastly, everybody in Rwanda has access to such great coffee that a good cup of coffee will be the fuel for any founder who's working long hours trying to build their business.
Well, that would be the most important reason now, wouldn't it? But as we say in Hebrew or in Yiddish, let's talk tachlis for a moment, because all these things are very important and they're very relevant, and they're a reason why we're turning this into a bit of an infomercial for Rwanda. But when it comes right down to it, another thing that one needs as a startup that's moving towards proof of concept or beyond is funding.
Sure.
And if there's one thing that Rwanda at the moment doesn't have, it's a lot of venture capital. So how do you see that? How do you see Rwanda's future with regard to attracting venture capital? Do you see this as something which is a major hurdle also for companies that want to come in there and do their piloting in Rwanda? So what is the future for venture capital in Rwanda?
So I do believe that the long-term future is, Kigali will be the innovation city for Africa. It's just, it's headed in that direction. There's sort of this collective visualization. I do believe that the quote unquote sandhill road of Africa will be in Kigali, where because of also not just the incredibly supportive government in terms of the anti-corruption and the great people like my friend Mr. Innocent here and his colleagues, but there's also a lot of policy in place that really makes it easy for business. One example that we can go into a little bit is the new initiative by Kigali International Financial Center, Rwanda Finance Limited, which is putting in structures to make it much easier for international investors to set up investments in Rwanda through the Rwanda Development Board's company registration program. They can set up an entity within just 6 hours by showing up to RDB. The airport is very accessible, so it's very easy to get in and out of the country. These things may seem trivial, but tachlis, directly, these are really important tools for investors to use. And what I do believe is that with some of the challenges facing other countries in the region, whether it's Kenya, which I love Nairobi, but you can't do more than 3 meetings a day in Nairobi because it takes 4 hours to get from meeting to meeting because of traffic. Lagos, unfortunately, still struggles with a little bit of personal safety going there. South Africa has some challenges. Rwanda is stable, and I do believe that in time it's going to be a place that attracts innovators to come. But the short-term success is exactly what Josh is doing at Ampersand. It's gonna be more of these cases of international companies doing a successful proof of concept in Rwanda, and then leveraging that to launch pad to the rest of the world, but raise tons of money. I think if you take the companies who have done successful POCs in Rwanda, including including Zipline, we researched, they've raised about at least $200 million in follow-on funding as a result of their successful proof of concepts in Rwanda. So it's a place where it doesn't just make sense for your product, but it makes a lot of sense for your business. But what's really exciting to see is that the future, the future Rwandan innovators that we're going to be investing in, I believe, just from the way that I see things, are going to be the early level but high-ranking employees and partners and co-founders of businesses like Ampersand. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, the one thing that really does fuel innovation are diverse perspectives at the table. And I think that Rwanda will add a lot of value to innovators like Josh, but ultimately the early employees there will be able to leverage that success and leverage that experience and that credibility and that traction in order to build their own businesses. And it's only a matter of time before we see the next Ampersand, with a Rwandan co-founder and CEO.
Thank you so much, Caleb. And now, and thank you to all of the panelists. We've come to the end of our panel. To Innocent and
Dr. Aliza, can I add on a point there on the point that Caleb mentioned?
Sure.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight the point he mentioned about Kigali International Finance Center, which is an entity that was recently set up that is really promoting Rwanda, not only as an innovation hub, but as an innovative financial international center. And one of the critical elements that they are looking into is exactly what you're asking. How do we bring in venture capitalists, other potential investors, angel investors in different forms and shapes? And quite a lot of policies are being drafted and put in place to be able to create that environment where investors are going to come and converge in the country to be able to actually respond to exactly that item that you just highlighted. And like I mentioned a little earlier, this is really now coming over and above the set of incentives that are being provided by for example, in terms of the incentives, the government is providing free rent, free land for charging stations, for example. If you want to set up charging stations, the government is going to provide free land, the government-owned land, for any company that is able to provide that. Anyone who is bringing electric vehicles, the spare parts and other accessories have tax exemptions. For example, the regulation and importation of used vehicles is actually being strengthened to limit that. There's also a policy that was approved recently. If you're bringing in an electric vehicle of a certain level or price, it is tax-free. So these are some of the other incentives that are added onto other initiatives like the Kigali International Finance Center that has been set up, that is now operationalizing and putting in strategies to attract different investors to come into the country. And they're actually working on a research and development where e-mobility will be financed through different initiatives and different instruments to be able to promote it and get it to a next level.
Wonderful. That sounds very exciting. And so I wanted to once again thank all of you, to Innocent and to Josh and to Caleb, for giving us a bit of a chance to shine a spotlight on Kigali and expose to the global smart mobility community some of the things that are happening there. I'm sure that if any of the people who are listening now to this panel are interested and end up exploring Rwanda a little further, then please drop us a line in EcoMotion and tell us that, that this has inspired your thinking. And thank you all for listening.